We are now on the top of Daf Samach Dalid Amud Beis, and we're up to Amar Rav. And the Gemara is now continuing to analyze the machlokus between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, and to bring a proof to each one of the two shitos. Let's again summarize. According to Rav, we bring the Sheni from the Rishon, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, we bring the Sheni of the Sheni. Omar Rava, Daika Masnisan Kavasi the Rav. A careful, meticulous reading of our Mishnah will support Rav. The Brisa, but I have a Brisa, Kavase the Rabbi Yochanan, that would support Rabbi Yochanan that we should bring the Sheni Shebasheni. Masnisin Kavasi the Rav, what's my diuk from the Mishnah to support Rav? To Katani, it says in the Mishnah, if one of the two serim dies and he brings a second pair to do a second agrola, the Mishnah says, Im shall shem mes. If the sire that was designated in the first hagrola, Lashem, died, then the Kohen should declare Zesha of Hagrola Lashem Yiskaim Tachtov. Now I'm doing a second gorol, and the one that's designated Lashem should replace the deceased Sar Lashem of the first Hagrola. And now the Gemara, Rav is Medayik. It's only in a situation where the sire died, then we have to replace it with another sire. But the Idach, the partner of the mess, which still is alive and well, Kiddukai Kai, it remains exactly as it was, which means it's Omed Biktu Shasa, as it was before its partner died, which means that there's no din of Dichui with the Misa of the partner. And that supports Rav, that Hasheni Shebezuga Rishon Yikarev, which according to Rabbi Yochanan is impossible because of the law of Dichui. Braisa Kavase de Rabbi Yochanan, the Ketani, Eni Odea, when I learn the Mishnah, I don't know, Im L'Sheni Shebezuga Rishon, Im L'Sheni Shebezuga Sheni. Now the Mishnah says that with regard to the Sheni, the live animal or the replacement of the deceased animal from the second Hagrola, one of those two is Yira Ad Sheyistayeh, but we don't know which one. Im L'Sheni Shebzug Sheni, which would reflect the sheet of Rav, or is it the Sheni Shebzug Arishon, which would reflect the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan, that there's Dichui, and therefore the Sheni Shebzug Arishon is Yira Ad Sheyistayeh. But Kshu Omer, says the Brisa, when the Torah says, describing the Sorel Azazel in Parshas Achri Mos, it says, Yomad Chai Lifnei Hashem. We're going to derive from that the sire of the second pair, which is now designated Lazazel, will be sent Lazazel, velo, but not the sire from the first Zug, Shechaveru Meis, which survived even after its partner died. So we know now that the Brisa came to the conclusion that when the Mishnah says Hasheni Yirah Ad Sheyistayeh, it means the sire of the Zug Harishon. And if we flip it around the other way, let's say, for example, from the pair of the first Hagrola, it was the sire Mitzalech that died, then we're going to be Makriv the Sheni Shebezug Sheni, and the Sheni Shebezug Rishon Yirah. So we see clearly from this Brisa, like Rabbi Yochanan. But now the Gemara asks, my mashma, what did the Brisa see and reveal from the pasuk Yomad Chai? And the answer is Yomad Chai. Yomad means one amida, and not two amidos. Sherak achshav b'shas hagrola zu yamod Chai. V'lo shekvar amad. Yamad chai means one of them. Which one of them? The one that right now, is standing in front of us. To the exclusion of shekvar amad, the one that was already omed for hakrava from the first hagrola. In any event, we see clearly from this brisa that it's the sheni mizug arishon that's yiral she's because of the principle of tichui, and there'll be makr of the sheni shebezug hasheni. Now, our Mishnah records a machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. And in the course of Rabbi Yehuda's statement, he adds v'od. We're going to spend a lot of time trying to figure out v'od. We get the impression that there's a twofold, a double machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanim. But first, let's talk about that machlokas which is explicit in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, and it probably be kedai at this point to just turn back to the Mishnah for a moment on Samach Beis Amud Aleph, the opening Mishnah of our perek. And the Mishnah says, Meis echad mehem, one of the two Seirim died, and im ad shalo higril meis is then yikach, he takes another one as zug hasheni. Im vishe higril meis, then yavi zug acher, the yagril, aleim kibitchila. The yomu im shel mes, shel shem mes, is zeh she'olav alav hagorol Hashem yiskaim tachtov. The im shel azazel mes, zeh she'olav hagorol azazel yiskaim tachtov. Again, I'm not going to interpret this Mishnah. We spent plenty of time on this Mishnah. And we have now two Seirim from the Gorel Hasheni, and now we have one Sayer that's left from the first Gorel, the surviving Sayer. So we have three Seirim, and we only need two out of the three. Is Hasheni Yira Adshi Stoif, etc. And we'll skip the explanation for a second. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer Tomus, that the extra Sayer, because we now have two Seirim, the duplicate of the one that survived from the first Hagrola, one of those two, says Rabbi Yehuda Mes, Tomus. Now, what is the machlokas here? So the Mishnah says that according to the Chacham, ein chatas tzibur mesa. Now, it's the halacha that once a person was brought a second chatos and was miskaper with the second chatos, then the first chatos needs misa. That only applies to a chatos yochid. So chatos yochid sheniskapru ba'aleh b'acheres is din ola misa. But the Chacham hold ein chatos tzibur mesa because there's no such thing as misa for the tzibur. Ein tzibur mesa. And Rabbi Yehuda applies the halacha of chatos sheniskapru ba'aleh b'acheres tamus even in the case of a chatos tzibur. And then the Mishnah goes on, it says, V'odam Rabbi Yehuda, as if to say another machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim, is nishbak hadam, if the Sorel Hashem, before they got to do the azos, the dam fell on the floor, Yomus HaMishtalech, we send the Mishtalech to its death. Meis HaMishtalech, same thing applies if the Sorel Mishtalech dies, then Yishafech Hadam, the Sorel Hashem is completely excluded. So now we go back to our Gemara here on Samach Daled Amud Beis. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah after the Mishnah quotes the machlokas between Rabbi Donan and Rabbi Yehuda about whether the second Sayer is Yirad Jistayev, because Ein Chatas Hatzibur Mesa, oh Yamus, that's Rabbi Yehuda, is Odom Rabbi Yehuda Nishpach Adam, the Sayer Lashem, its dam fell on the floor before it was Hazak Mitzvah. So Yamus, Samishalech Yamus. Why? Because it's Nidche. And it's not Roy. And we're going to bring two Seirim Acherim for a Hagrola, and we start from scratch. And so too, Meis HaMishtalech, if the Soyer Mishtalech died before the Azaz Dam HaSoyer Pnimi Dam HaSoyer Lashem Kimitzvos Yishafech Hadam, then the Dam of the Soyer Pnimi has to be completely destroyed. It's not Roy La Avoda. And he has to bring Tutsi Macherim and do Agrola Michodesh. So the Gemara says, Bishleim Rabbi Yochanan, this Shita of Rabbi Yehuda can make sense according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Yoma Bali Chaim Nidachin, which means that once you docha the Baal Chai from the Mizbeach and it is excluded, even if later it became Roy again, it's still excluded. Mishum Dehachi, now we understand, Yamus HaMishtaleach. We now understand that if the dam of the Sar Lashem was Nishpach, then at that moment, the Soyer Mishtaleach becomes Nidche, and it's Nidche Liolam. And that's what the Shita Rabbi Yehuda is when he says, O the Om Rabbi Yehuda na Mishnah Nishpach Adam, Yamus HaMishtalech. El L'Rav D'Omer Bali Chaim Einim Nidachim, Amai Yamus HaMishtalech. Why should we put the Mishtalech to death when there's Nishpach Dam HaPnimi? After all, we can now bring through a second agrola, a replacement of the Soyer Hashem, and the Soyer Mishtalech is alive and well, and there's no dichui according to Rav in a Bali Chaim that's alive and well. Rav now has to admit that in the context of the second machlokus, he cannot be reconciled with Rabbi Yehuda, but that's not tragic because Rav could hold like the Rabbanon. Rav, for sure. There's machlokus between Rabbanon and Rabbi Yehuda regarding the din of Bali Chaim, whether nidachim or einam nidachim. And from Rabbi Yehuda who says v'od, it seems like he's coming to add a new machlokus in which he disagrees and dissents with the Chachamim, because he understood from the Rabbanon that Bali Chaim einam nidachim, and therefore the Sheni Sheba Rishon yikarev. That's how the Rabbanon held. And Rabbi Yehuda came along to argue, and he says, no, what do you mean Hasheni Sheba Rishon Yikaret? That's impossible, because Bali Chaim Nidachim. So I'll leave it to Rabbi Yehuda lo karmina. Rav says in all naivete that I never meant to present a shita that would stand on the shoulders of Rabbi Yehuda. Ki amina, and I'll leave it to Rabbanan. Whatever I said, I was standing on the shoulders of the Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan hold ein Bali Chaim Nidachim, and therefore we can makriv the Sheni Sheba Rishon. The Gemara continues to ask from our Mishnah, Bishlema LeRav. I understand according to Rav, Beha Pligi Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. We have machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan as to which soyer should be sacrificed on the mizbech. Should it be the sheni mizug rishon or mizug hasheni? And that's the machlokes Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan in the Sefer of our Mishnah. So we understand very well what the word v'od means, because in the Reisha, the machlok between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda revolves around the status of Chatas HaTzibur, where the Chatas HaTzibur is Mesa, that's Rabbi Yehuda Shita, or Eino Mesa, which is the Chachamim Shita. And the Sefer now introduces a whole new machlok between Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda regarding Bali Chaim Nidachim or Ein Bali Chaim Nidachim. Elul Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that even according to the Chachamim, Bali Chaim Nidachim, which means that when the Mishnah says Hasheni Yiroeh, it means the Sheni from the Zug HaRishon is b'mai pligi. What's the machlok between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan in the Sefer? What new dimension is the ode in the Sefer adding when even the Rabbanan concede to Rabbi Yehuda that it's the soyer from the second Zug is Karev? They hold that the soyer Mishtalech is Yiroeh because there's no din of Chata Shemesu Balea liachar shenis kapru etc. with regard to chatas hatzibur. Rabbi Yehuda sover sheyomos because he disregards the halacha of chatas. He doesn't have the halacha of chatas hatzibur lo mesa. So we have the identical machlokes in the Sefer as we have in the Reisha. And yet, Rav Yehuda says viod implying a brand new machlokes. Amar Rava Amrinon. I already told you before, Daika Masnisin Kavasi Derav, that our Mishnah certainly reflects the sheet of Rav. Now the Gemara asks a kasha on Rav from our Mishnah Tanah, and it says in our Mishnah that according to Chachamim, the sa'ir that's extra is yira ad shestoet, and it doesn't go for misa like chatas shekipru ba'aleh b'acheres. Why? Mishum she'ein chatas tzibur mesa hadiyachid b'chiyah gavna mesa. The implication is that if a person was mafresh his own personal carbon chatas, and if there was a kaparas bailim acheres, then the din is mesa. Right? There's no din of yeroah ad sheyistayev. The only machlok shin rabbanon against Rav Yehuda is in the case of chatas hatzibur. Is bishleim Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, who interpreted that the Chacham and Mishnah hold that the Sarah Sheni Mizug Harishon Yeroah. Now I understand the language of Ein Chatas Tzibur Mesa. Because had it been a Chatas of a Yachid, it would be Lemisa. Because this is like a Chatas Avuda, it's like a lost Chatas. Once the other partner dies. And all this is a reflection of Rabbi Abba Marav's interpretation of the machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbanon in Tmura on Daf Chav Beis Amid Beis, the machlokes between Rebbe and Rabbanon about the case where he was mafresh behema lechatos of the habehema. He lost his chatos. He was mafresh a second substitute replacement chatos. And then they found the first chatos. So he has now two behemos. Both are sanctified as chatos, both standing in front of us. Now, he went ahead, he was makriv one of the two. I'm not sure that he should have done that, but he did it. So we have now machlokes Rebbe and the Rabbanan in Tmura. What do we do with the other behemoth? Rebbe holds Tamus. This is a case of chatos shekipru ba'aleh bi'acheres, right? Because he went in, he was makriv one of the two animals. So the other one is now dina lemisa, like any chatos hamesas. Chachamim hold, no, there's no dina misa teirad shetistoy. Why? Because that principle of chatos shekipru ba'aleh b'acheres, and therefore oleches lemisa, that only applies in a case where they located the lost animal after they already brought the kapara through its replacement. But if they located the original lost chatas before the kapara bailim, even though the bailim went ahead and they were mafresh a second carbon to replace it, there's no din of misa. That was the machlokes between the Rabbanon and Rebbe. And now we have the comment on this machlokes, the Omar, Rebbe Abba Marav. Here we turn to Daf Samachay. Hakol, everybody, whether it's Rebbe or the Rabbanan Modim, she'im niskaper b'she'ena avuda. In other words, if the second chatos that he was mafresh after he lost the first one was brought on the mizbeach, then havuda mesa. Everybody agrees that in that case, when he was makriv, the second replacement carbon, the first carbon now goes lemisa. It's a case, classic, of niskapru ba'aleh bi'acheres. And that's how Loch Lamos should be Sinai, the chata sha'avda v'kipru ba'aleh b'acheres dina lemisa. Then, says Rav, what is the machlokes between Rebbe and the Rabbanon? It's in the reverse case, where they were makriv, not the replacement karmachatas, but rather the original karmachatas, which was originally lost and now they found it. And now the discussion is, what's the status of the second behema that was designated as a replacement chatas? According to Rebbe, if a person is mafresh a behema for a karba that was lost, it has the same status as the karba that was lost. And therefore, just like in the case where the kapara came about through the second replacement karban, the first one, when we find it goes lamisa, the same exact halacha applies in the reverse. If he brought the first karban, which was lost and then relocated, then the shnia, the other karban that he was mafresh as a replacement, goes lamisa. And the Rabbanan hold, no. With this case is what we call tashlume ha'avud. In other words, the second chatos is a tashlum, a replacement for the one that got lost. Ain't dinam k'mo'avid. It doesn't have the same status as that chatos that was lost. And if he was miskaper in the chatos that was lost, then the second chatos is roeh. Roeh means yirad she'istoi. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that that what the Rabbanan meant was that if the soya mishtaleach dies, then hasoyer me'azug hasheni karev. I'm sorry. If just 1 second, if meis hamishtalech. Right. I got it right. So the Sar Mishalech from the first Hagrola died. Now the Sar Lashem of the second Zug is Karev. And the Sayer from the first Zug, meaning the Sar Lashem, is Yirah. So now we understand, why did the Mishnah say, Ein Chatos Atzibur Mesa? Had it been a Chatos of a Yachid, everybody would agree that Dino Lemisa. Like any case of avudim sheniskapu balem biachet. Elo Rav, but according to Rav, who says that what the Chacham had in mind is that the soyer from the Zuga Rishon Yikarev, and it's the soyer from the Zuga Sheni that's Yira. Now we have a problem. Why did the Chacham say Ein Chatos Atzibur Mesa? What was the meaning of that statement? Which implies that had it been a Chatos HaYachid in that case, then it would be Mesa. But now we're saying that both Rebbe and the Rabbanan would reject such a thing, because the Rabbanan in Masechet Tmura certainly would hold that the soyer is not holich lemisa, because Rav already said makriv es harishon vasheni, and the second one, according to the Rabbanan, is tashlume ha'avad. And if it's tashlume ha'avad, there's no din of ke'avud, and therefore, according to the sheet of the Chacham, he's mafresh li avud. Aim dino kamoa avid. That second replacement carbon is not identical with the first carbon that got lost, and we don't have the halacha moshe misinai of misa. And even according to Rebbe, who holds that when he's mafresh a behema as tashlume avud, it's dino lemisa, but nevertheless, this soyer lo hufresh le tashlume avud. Why? Because the soyer of the Zuga Rishon, which was designated Lashem, still is alive and well like it always was. Rather than its Ben Zug died. And therefore we had to bring another 2 Seirim and set up a new Agrola. But since Rav holds that Ein Balichaim Nidachim Klal, he could be makriv it as long as he, in other words, he could choose any one of the two Seirim that he wants to choose. And therefore, if a person from the get-go was mafresh 2 behemoths for a chatos, and he decides he'll choose later on which one he wants to use for his ritzui, if one of them gets lost, he can be miskaper with the other one. lachrayus miskaper biachas mevashnia tira. So that even according to Rebbe, who holds that when you're mafresh for a lost carbon, it has the second replacement has the same status as the first carbon. But here, since lo hufresha metchila leibud, right, the one that he was mafresh, that didn't get lost. Ella litnai v'achrayus shem lo tia achas man ruyis kappa b'chaverta harim moda b'ofen zeh she'ein dina lemisa. Shedin chata shekibru b'aleo b'acheret sholechas lemisa. That only applies k'shenitches b'kach sha'avda. Or in the case of tashlume avud shedina ke'avud. But here it was never nidche. So just to summarize, according to Rav, that the soyer from the Zuga Rishon is royal mitzvaso. Now he has two seirim after he does the second agrola that are omdim l'shem mitzvah. It's like a case of being mafresh l'tnayu lachrayus, and the din is that the chatas of Yachid, it goes l'raya and not l'misa. So why does the Mishnah say that the reason why the Sarah Sheni dies is because ein? Why doesn't the Sarah Sheni die? It's because ein chatas tzibur mesa. That doesn't make any sense. And the Gemara answers, and with this we'll conclude for today, that Kevan Yoma Rava says back on Daf Samach Dalet, she Rav Savalo Kirab Yosi Yoma Mitzvah Rishon. Therefore, Meikara, when he's mafresh the Sheni through the second Goro, Kim mafresh ibud dami. Whatever he was mafresh is only on the condition sheya'aved v'yelech l'misa. Now, that's not like the case of mafresh lachrayus. So Rav is going to interpret that Mishnah like Rebbe, who holds that mafresh le'ibud ke'avud dami, and therefore, in this case, had it been a chatas yachid, it would be dina l'misa, and that's why the Mishnah had to include that phrase, that the reason why the sheni is roa ad shistav is because ein chatas hatzibur mesa. Okay, we'll make a note of where we got up to here. Tnan Rabbi Yehuda. Oh, have a great day.